On today's show, we break down the top steals of the 2024 NHL Draft class.
You are Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, and welcome back to Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On this show, we break down everything prospects related for you 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, and we are in peak prospect season right now with the draft just behind us and a lot of excited NHL fan bases with a whole new wealth of prospects in their pools. Today, we're going to break down a bunch of the biggest steals that were made at the 2024 draft, where both me and Hattie were present in Las Vegas in the sweltering 45 degrees Celsius heat. It was quite an experience. But before we jump straight into the episode today's episode is brought to you by GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your next purchase. So let's jump straight into this because we're going to start off with the biggest name in terms of steals in this draft class, and it's not particularly close in my opinion. The uproar that was heard in the Spheres crowd when this selection was made by none other than Zeev Buium for the Montreal Canadiens at 5th overall, Ivan Demidov. We've been cheering his praises all season long. We've been doing deep dives into his game and analyzing what makes him such a special prospect. So if you're interested in that, we have a bunch of content for you in that direction. But really what makes Demidov so special is the electrifying skill paired with the extremely high-end hockey IQ. That combination of elite level intelligence and elite level game breaking skill and creativity. He has a high motor. It all gels together to create a fairly projectable potential 120 plus point player at the NHL level. The type of player that typically when they have this type of projection on draft day are not available past 3rd overall. And the Montreal Canadiens were fortunate enough for Ivan Demidov to be available at 5. And that was a home run swing and a half. They made it very clear after the draft, whether it be in the press conferences of Nick Bobrov or Kent Hughes, that Demidov was their guy the entire time, and that they had a couple smoke screens in place to magnify the odds of him potentially falling to their slot. But this is a fantastic prospect. He's listed at 6 feet, 192 pounds. I will say he walked past me at the draft. I'm about 6 feet exactly. He looks significantly taller than me. So don't be surprised if that gets rounded up to 6'1" or 6'1.5" in the near to medium term future. But this guy's built. He's a pretty big hockey player. So all the narratives about him being undersized, like soft skill Russian winger, have been crumbling a little bit in the past couple months. And yeah, this is just a fantastic prospect who scored 60 points in 30 NHL regular season games last season and added 28 points in 17 playoff games. He played better as the year went on. His second half was significantly better than his first half of the season, and the sky is the limit with his potential. He's going to need time to develop, and he might not be a top-line player as soon as he hits the NHL next season, but I wouldn't be shocked if he were. He is that skilled and that talented, and we're going to be doing a series on this podcast where we're going to break down each and every NHL team's like season report card, as well as like their draft and analyzing their draft class, grading their draft class, and looking forward into how that team might progress. And when that Habs episode is going to come up, and it should be one of the first ones because we'll be following the draft order. I'm sure we're going to dive even deeper into Demidov and what makes him such a special talent. But for now, let us move on to the second steal of the draft here, and that has to be Zeev Buium. At 12th overall, the Minnesota Wild traded up one single slot to leap over the Philadelphia Flyers to select at 12th overall, and they swung hard on Zeev Buium. This is a highly intelligent, really skilled and nifty defenseman. He's a little bit undersized at just about 6 feet, but the degree of intelligence, defensive habits, the refinement in his game, whether it be on puck or off puck, his ability to use line mates to create better situations for the puck always ends up in a better place than where he got it when he gets the puck. And yeah, he's a fantastic prospect. There's so much to like here, and Minnesota fans are rightfully very excited for this player. He scored 11 goals and 50 points in 42 NCAA games as a college freshman, and that was top in the entire nation in blue line scoring. So beyond just that pure offensive production, which is remarkably strong, Buium has a really well-rounded game. He makes a big impact in transition. He constantly uses head fakes and shoulder fakes to make defenders bite, and he accesses space really intelligently. He's manipulative with the puck on his stick, and he's so shifty in terms of escapability in tight. The skating mechanics in a straight line definitely still need some work, but that evasiveness is already really helping him at the college level and projects as a strength in the NHL as well. Minnesota has a tendency to make these swings on really intelligent, really like high upside as well players on draft day, especially in their defensive core, and even acquiring them via trade. I'm thinking back to guys like Jonas Brodin and Jared Spurgeon, and more recently Brock Faber. The Wild are not afraid to go for more undersized defensemen that are able to compensate with a high degree of tools, habits, and overall intelligence on the ice. And Buium should have been a top 7 pick in this draft class, so getting him at 12th overall is fantastic value. And yeah, I think that the Philadelphia Flyers are going to be under the microscope for quite a long time for having traded out of that spot in order to select Jet Luchenko, who is a really intriguing prospect, but 13th overall, in my opinion, is a bit rich for the upside he will bring. He is a true middle six piece long term. And if that's the outlook on draft day, 13th overall is for me a little bit too much value in terms of draft slots to invest in that type of player. But Zeev Buium is fantastic value at 12. And Minnesota Wild fans, you're going to have a stud on your hands, and it's not going to take particularly long. Give it a year, maybe 2, and he should be a middle pairing NHL guy, and there's top pairing upside in his projection as well. So a bunch to look forward to here. Last but not least, let's jump straight back to the Montreal Canadiens here, because at 21st overall, they picked Michael Hage, a fantastic story for a prospect who was drafted by his childhood team, the team that he and his brother and his father all cheered together for. And he tragically lost his father a year ago in an accident. And to be selected by that childhood team is just poetic as well, right? But beyond the wonderful off-ice parts of this draft selection, the on-ice is also fantastic. Michael Hage missed his almost entire D-1 season to injury, also had to overcome a lot of adversity, but he stuck with the Chicago Steel throughout that injury, so he was still absorbing and learning while he was down injured, and that became very, very clear in his draft year season because his progression was fantastic for the Chicago Steel. This is a program that's typically really, really strong, and their development staff is absolutely fantastic. But this year's group wasn't the strongest they've had in the past few years. They just lost Macklin Celebrini, obviously, and it's a bit more difficult to compete when you lose a player of that caliber. But Michael Hage took the reins around the midway point of the season. Towards the beginning of the year, he was shoring up his defensive game, really learning the ins and outs of defensive and off-puck habits, trying to learn how to support his teammates in all 3 zones as effectively as he could. And in the second half of the season, a bit of a switch kind of flipped, and the offense just took a really big jump. This is a player who, up until 2 years ago, was viewed as the top Canadian in his age group among all male hockey prospects. And while the injury set him back a little bit, he's, in my eyes, made up that ground. This is a player who's fantastically skilled. The puck handling, the goal scoring, the playmaking, the skating, all are way, way above NHL average in terms of projections, in my opinion. And he was a lock inside my top 16 or 17 for the last 4 months of the draft. I've been a really big fan of this player, and the degree of intelligence he also has on puck is spectacular, but he's still going to have to learn to add layers of intensity in his game, especially in his puck rushes. He can be a little bit like static at times in his puck rushes and a little bit too passive, but the NCAA game is going to teach him how to have an extra bit of speed in that facet of the game, and a bit more intensity and involvement and engagement overall. But there's a lot to like with this prospect. I think the Habs got an absolute gem here, a player who figures in as the second best forward prospect in the Canadiens prospect pool now after Ivan Demidov. And there's a lot to be excited for in Habs land at this point. But that wraps up this segment. In the next one, we're going to jump into some more exciting prospects, including Stian Solberg, who fell to the Anaheim Ducks at 23. But first, a quick word from our sponsors over at GameTime. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and the lowest price guarantee, GameTime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. And that can be for any event that you are interested in, whether it be sports like the NHL or the MLB or NBA, or concerts or theater performances or comedy shows. Whatever floats your boat, GameTime is there to have your back. GameTime offers last-minute deals that offers up to 60% off when you're buying last-minute to sports games, and it allows you to be really spontaneous. If you have a weekend or an evening free and you just want to do something exciting, want to treat yourself to something, GameTime is exactly where you want to be looking, because they have all of these fantastic prices when you are looking to buy those last-minute tickets. You can also take advantage of zone deals and flash deals, where you can save even more when you're selecting a section and allowing GameTime to select a seat, or are looking for exclusive short-term deals that are available on the mobile app. With the seat views, you also know exactly what your view is going to be like in the stadium, the arena, wherever the venue is that you're going to be watching your event. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app today. Use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your next purchase. Terms apply, but again, use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download GameTime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Alrighty, let's jump straight into the next player here. And this was a guy that I was shocked to fall this far down the draft slots. Stian Solberg at 23rd overall for the Anaheim Ducks. This is a player that finished the season 14th on my personal rankings. And for us over at Dobber Prospects, he also ended up well within our top 20. This is a guy who brings so much to the table. If you're looking for a shutdown physical defenseman outside that top 15 range, this was the guy. Solberg is a violent and smooth skating defenseman. The skating mechanics are a real area of strength. The edge work is fantastic, but it's the violence and the calculated ability to leverage that violent nature that makes him such a special defensive player. He is a fantastic rush defender when he's on his game. We saw him at the World Championships, absolutely locked down Connor Bedard versus Team Canada, and did so with apparent ease. He was handling also fully grown NHL men pretty comfortably at that tournament, and that just built off of what he was doing all season long as well, whether it be with Vålerenga in the Norwegian Pro League or with Team Norway internationally. He had a fantastic U20 World Juniors as well for Norway. He was playing 30 minutes a night, and by the end of the tournament, he was pretty exhausted because I believe they played like 4 games in 5 nights at one point, and he was playing half of the game every game. But beyond those like slight iffy viewings due to being overworked and overloaded, he's been remarkably consistent all season long. He's intelligent. He does not get himself out of position. He is a true play killer by nature. He steals space away from his opponents. He suffocates play into the boards. He's not afraid of making a big open ice hit either. And there's a lot of runway as well with his on-puck and offensive games. The puck handling game is pretty solid and has room to grow. The passing ability in transition definitely needs some work still. There's a level of hesitation when he's pressured, but that is something that I'm sure he's going to be able to work on when he transfers to Färjestad in the SHL for this upcoming season. And he's also not going to be playing half an hour every single game there. So you're going to be able to see him actually refine like targeted areas in this game rather than just trying to tread water with those massive minutes. But offensively, there's a degree of creativity. He's had a couple end-to-end rush goals this season. He has a booming shot from the point. He's not afraid to activate and move up into the offensive zone. He's a good one-touch passer. He's able to do little quick give-and-go plays. And overall, I think this is going to be a long-term top 4 NHL defenseman. And I was shocked that he was available at 23rd overall, but the Anaheim Ducks got fantastic value in this draft slot. Next up, we're moving out of the first round and into the second here with Igor Chernyshov. And the San Jose Sharks just hit an absolute home run with their first 3 picks at this draft. Starting off, Macklin Celebrini at first overall. You cannot go wrong as long as you're picking Macklin in that slot this year. And then they also got Sam Dickinson at 11th. They moved up a couple days prior to the draft, trading with the Buffalo Sabres to acquire that 11th overall selection. And Sam Dickinson somehow was available in that slot, which was surprising to a lot of people down on the draft floor that I was talking to in the media section especially. And fantastic value for the Sharks. This is a player who definitely has some growing room still in the mental aspects of the game and reading plays, and his risk assessment gauge could still use some work. He's very aggressive and can sometimes be overly so, but overall the tools are fantastic. He already has an NHL ready body. He is completely built. He's like 6'3", over 200 pounds, and he looks like a full-time NHLer already, if you didn't know. And yeah, he's a really fun player as well. Like offensively, there's a degree of playmaking and goal scoring ability that he's flashed all season long, scoring 70 points in 68 games for the London Knights, playing primarily second pairing minutes, both at even strength and on the power play. So look to his production to really ramp up in his D+1 season if all goes well in his development. But the Sharks needed to add some more size and grit and potential number 1 presence to their blue line. And I think Sam Dickinson brings exactly that. To get that type of piece at 11th overall is just great. You cannot complain there whatsoever. The combination of Dickinson and Celebrini in the first round is fantastic. And then to add in Igor Chernyshov at 33 is really, really good. Chernyshov's been one of my favorite players all season long. He's a 6'3", 203-pound right shot left winger who played in the KHL this past season and was really, really good in those minutes. Even though his 4 points in 34 games don't really reflect that impact on paper, he was a fantastic defensive piece for Dynamo Moscow, and he played consistent bottom 6 and sometimes even middle 6 minutes. As a result of that, he was reliable. He was able to shut down in the defensive zone. He reads passing lanes really well. He applies pressure intelligently. He's rarely out of position. He uses his strength and his reach to lock down quite a large range in the defensive zone. And beyond that, he's also really effective in transition. He's able to make quick one-touch give-and-go plays in transition to feed the breakout. He's not selfish on the puck, but he has fantastic hands as well. And the shot to go with those hands is really what cultivates the high-end offensive upside in my eyes. He's able to get the puck from just about any awkward angle and get a really heavy and accurate shot off. And blending that handling and goal scoring ability together is, I think, how he could make his mark as a top 6 NHL scoring power forward. And even if he doesn't hit that offensive ceiling, and in order to hit it, he's going to need to expand his playmaking game. He's going to have to be able to more overtly leverage his big frame, his violence, his physicality to create space for himself around the net front. But if he's able to, this could be a guy that scores upwards of 60 points a season, and exactly the kind of player that you want alongside a player like Macklin Celebrini. They're going to complement each other well, so nicely, really. Like, they're going to be great together. And he also brings some more physicality and size to that San Jose forward core that has so much skill, from William Eklund to Will Smith to Macklin Celebrini, but that power forward element had been missing a little bit, apart from guys like Kasper Halttunen, and I think Igor Chernyshov is a far more intriguing prospect than him. Next up, we've got Teddy Stiga to wrap up this second segment. Stiga is a player that I think every single scout has a soft spot for that I've spoken to. He has a really high motor. He's really intelligent. The handling and playmaking abilities could give him a second line NHL upside. But what makes him special is that he's a fantastic facilitator of play. He's a true line connector. And Cole Yzerman would not have scored nearly as many goals as he did if it weren't for the minutes he played with Teddy Stiga. And Stiga was also a fantastic complement to James Higgins throughout the season with the NTDP. But this is a guy who scored quite a few points this season, too. Stiga put up a really solid... Stiga scored 79 points, including 36 goals in 61 games for the program last season, but played his absolute best hockey at the U18 World Championships, scoring 6 goals and 11 points in 7 games as one of the US's best forwards and most dynamic and offensively dangerous forwards in that tournament. Probably behind only like James Higgins and maybe Brody Zemer. But it was a fantastic tournament for him. And of course, it was the Nashville Predators that took that swing at 55th overall. They love their skill. They love their upside. They love their players that bring a lot of elements that you need to be successful at the NHL level, whether it be the intensity, the intelligence, the playmaking ability, and that adaptability in the offensive zone to get creative and create things when the original plan falls to pieces, which it more than not does at the NHL level. So Stiga was a fantastic value selection at 55th overall. I think he has a great fallback game as well for that like bottom 6 upside as well if the skill doesn't quite elevate him into that top 6 range. And he's off to a fantastic program this year as well with Boston College, where he's going to be able to rack up some points, play some minutes, and play alongside some players that he's already familiar with in Ryan Leonard and Gabe Perreault. So I'm very excited to see what the future has to hold for Stiga, but that wraps things up for the second segment, and we're going to finish up the episode with some mid to late round steals, including a really fun player by the name of Ryerson Leenders. But first, a quick word from our sponsors here at the Locked On NHL Podcast Network. Alrighty, let's wrap things up here. And we're going to start off with the biggest name of the players that fell massively on draft day, and that's Aron Kiviharju, the 5'10", probably closer to 5'9", left shot defenseman who's about 185 pounds, was selected at 122nd overall by the Minnesota Wild. This was a massive fall for a player that had some significant top 5, even top 3 hype about a year and a half or 2 years ago. For this draft class, and he fell like an anchor on draft day. I think that a lot of people in the media section were pretty shocked of just how far he was falling, because while there are certainly a lot of questions around his projectability to the NHL level, this is a player who has a fantastic foundation of passing ability, intelligence, and mobility. And that's a combination that, sure, we've seen struggle at the NHL level recently, whether it be the Nils Lundqvists or the Eric Brandstroms of the world that have had really massive hype going into like their D+3, D+4 seasons and not really, very much struggling to making the final leap to becoming a true impact piece at the NHL level. But Kiviharju has that basis of intelligence, and an NHL scout that I spoke to, not from the team that drafted him, also made a point of mentioning that this was like the highest character player he'd ever interacted with or interviewed, and that you could talk to him for hours as if he were a full-grown adult in terms of the maturity as well. So the fact that he has that level of character on top of the on-ice skill, despite the injury woes, of course, too, but it really is surprising to me that he fell as far as he did with that strong basis of maturity and intelligence, both on and off the ice. But last year, he only got into 7 league games with HIFK in Liga, where he scored a goal and an assist in 7 games. And he struggled to handle the intensity, the pace, and the physicality of that level. But we're going to see what he's able to do this upcoming season. I'm very curious. Because there really still is second pairing upside here if all goes well. And while the likelihood of that is certainly diminished, and there's a reason that I had him ranked outside of my personal top 50, and even that felt a little bit off because of all that like hype that he's been having for years and years and years in the past. I was not expecting him to fall quite this far. So Minnesota took another swing, and even though his NHL likelihood probably isn't above 50%. To get this player in the late 4th round is fantastic value and a swing that a team had to take. And I'm not all surprised that Minnesota ended up being that precise team. But moving on to another undersized player, there's a theme in this final segment in terms of the late round steals, and that they're all a little bit undersized. But here we're going to talk about a Carolina Hurricanes draft selection in Justin Poirier, the 5'8", 183-pound right shot right winger who is an absolute sniper, who scored 51 goals and 82 points in 68 games for the Bécomo Dracars in the QMJHL this past season, and then added on to that in the playoffs by scoring 18 goals and 27 points in 17 playoff games. He is a really clutch player, and he adapted his game as the season went on. He's really pesky. He likes to get implicated in physical battles. He has a really high stride rate, really high motor. He gets under opponents' skin, and he makes their lives really difficult, which is exactly what you want to see in an undersized goal-scoring winger. Beyond just that, while at the beginning of the season, he was a bit of a one-trick pony in his offensive toolkit, being a real rush score, curl and drag type of shooter, by the end of the year, he was incredibly adaptable, and he has a top 3 release in this entire draft class. The goal score and the shooting ability is fantastic. After Cole Yzerman and maybe Macklin Celebrini, there's no one that comes too close, I don't think, even though guys like TJ Ginla have absolute rockets of shots. Justin Poirier is a true natural goal scorer, and while he's not a slam dunk NHLer, and there's a reason that he fell this far on draft day, not this far, but there's a reason he fell on draft day, he fell to the 5th round, 156th overall. But I still think that there's so much to like in this player. He's one of the youngest players in the draft class. He's a September 4th, 06 birthday, just 11 days before the 2025 draft cutoff. So I'd be very, very excited for this player if I were a Carolina Hurricanes fan. And again, not a slam dunk NHLer, but if you compare him with a guy like Jordan Dumais, I think that Poirier has a far more projectable, dynamic, and electrifying toolkit at his disposal. So I like his chances. I had him ranked, I think, 34th overall on my personal board, and I would have picked him well inside the 3rd or 2nd round if I'd been drafting personally. So to get him in the 5th is just a great swing to take, and there's home run potential here. But to wrap up the episode, we're going to do a little bit of a position change here with Ryerson Leenders, the undersized 6-foot goaltender who played for the Mississauga Steelheads this past season, was drafted at 219th overall in the 7th round by the Buffalo Sabres. He's also really young for the draft class, as a June 1st, 06 birthday, and he played fantastic hockey for Mississauga this season. He didn't have the highest of workloads because he's splitting the crease with another fantastic prospect who's going to be eligible for the next draft in Jack Ivankovic, but he still played fantastic hockey in that stretch, putting up a .909 save percentage for the Steelheads. And he also only played a single game at the U18 World Championships for Team Canada because Carter George absolutely stole that crease. But in that one game, which I believe was against Latvia, he did put up a .963 save percentage as well. So this is a player who's very intelligent. He's able to really manage the puck really well. He's a really strong puck tracker. His positioning is sound. He makes up for his lack of size with those really intricate details that I think are going to give him a real path to an NHL starting goaltending role. It's going to take time. It's going to take 4, 5, 6 years. But I think that Buffalo has made a really smart investment in selecting him this late in the draft. But that wraps things up for this episode. We're going to have so much content coming your way, breaking down the 2024 draft class. And as I mentioned in the first segment, we're going to have a whole series unfolding, breaking down NHL teams' offseason report cards and their draft classes and giving them grades for them. So lots to look forward to here at Locked On NHL Prospects. But that wraps things up for me here. Sebastian, hi. I'm the Director of European Scouting over at Dobber Prospects, typically joined by my co-host Hadi Kalakesh, who couldn't make it today, but will return for next week's episodes. If you're watching on YouTube, please leave us a comment, like, subscribe, let us know what you think about the episode, and give us some episode ideas for the summer, because we're going to have a lot of time, a lot of episodes to fill up before we're going to have hockey back on our screens in the fall. And if you're listening on your favorite podcasting platform, make sure to make us your first listen of the day. For your second listen of the day, check out Locked On Sports Today for a 24-hour-a-day YouTube live stream with all the sporting news that you could possibly want to have access to. So thank you so much for listening, and we hope that you tune back in soon.